Hello, hello, hello. Good to see everyone. Hopefully you can see and hear me okay. Welcome. Awesome, GM. I'm just going to invite Nader to the stage. And yeah. Hi everyone, welcome back. So good to see you. Hello. Hello Nader, how are you? Awesome. Good, so good to hear. And oh wait, you're on mute. I thought it was
Oh,
my
there we
side.
go. Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, all good. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. GM everyone. Good morning, evening, night. Welcome back. We are kicking off today's first workshop with Nada from Lens. We're going through a workshop for building full stack social applications. Yeah, essentially Lens Protocol 101. Cool. If just to go over a few housekeeping things as well quickly. Sorry, Nada, I hope you don't mind. If you are finding it difficult to find the hacker pack or resources, I know some of you were. I'm just going to quickly share the hacker pack here so you can get access. That's pretty much it from me. Cool. Nada, if you are ready to present, feel free to share your screen and we can begin.
Awesome. Yeah, let me go ahead and pull up what I need and then share my screen. Cool. Awesome. Well, before I get into that presentation, just want to kind of walk through what a Lens application looks like, and then I'll introduce you to myself and a lot of other things. But the main thing we're going to be looking at today is how to build out social applications or applications with social features using Lens protocol. This is Lenster. This is one of the Lens apps that is pretty popular. It's a mainly like web application, but it also is supported on mobile web. And then we have a couple of mobile apps that are kind of also extremely popular. One of them is called Orb, and one of them is called Butterfly. And if you go to lens.xyz, you can apply for a handle, and hopefully you can also maybe DM me or someone from Onyx, and we can also try to get you a handle faster. But right now, Lens is kind of in a closed beta. You don't need a handle to actually build applications, though. So if you don't get a handle, you can still actually build really easily. But if you want to try out some of the applications, you might need a handle. You can also get a testnet handle anytime just by going to our docs, and you'll be checking out some of our docs later on, but they're at docs.lens.xyz. So most of these applications have functionality that you would expect out of a social application: the ability to sign in and create a profile, the ability to post content. And in the case of Lens, you have different recommendation algorithms that you can also choose from. For example, here we have like a menu of different recommendation algorithms. And this is kind of one of the things that's made possible through public and open data that isn't really available through something like Twitter or YouTube or TikTok, even, where you're only given like one recommended feed. You know, you don't really have the option to kind of switch out of that and try out different things. So, with that being said, this is going to be a workshop that's broken up into two parts. The first part is an introduction to Lens, and then the second part is actually live coding a Lens app. So, my name is Nader Dabbit. I'm a teacher and author. I've been doing developer education for about 8 years, but I've also been a developer for 11 years. I've written 2 books, and I've also launched a lot of applications, apps to the App Store, built a couple of multi-million-dollar companies and stuff throughout the time that I've been building. But the thing I really like to do is teach. And currently I'm working with Lens Protocol and Aave. And if you want to learn more about some of the stuff we're talking about in this workshop, this is a QR code that will give you links to our documentation. It'll give you links to some of the GitHub GitHub repositories that we're going to be looking at, and pretty much everything you need to know to start building with Lens. So with that being said, what is Lens? Lens is a protocol essentially that allows you to build social applications. So it's not like a social app. When you think of something like Twitter, Twitter is both the front end and the back end in a combined package, and you just download the app and use it. With Lens, we focus only on building the back end infrastructure and making it easy for developers to build apps. So the way I describe it is that it's a protocol and a suite of tools and APIs for easily building social apps or integrating social features into existing apps. Social applications have a massive user base. There are almost 5 billion people in the world using social apps as of today. This is almost every single person on the internet. This isn't a use case that needs to be explained to most people, right? Most people understand what this looks like. They've experienced it before. Unlike a lot of what you might consider blockchain specific applications that are very niche and often need a lot of education in order for someone to understand them. So, for instance, a DeFi protocol with staking is some new concept to most people. Even dealing with financial applications in general might not be that compelling to most people, but most people do like being able to like learn new things, and a lot of the ways that we kind of do that are through social applications. When I go on Twitter, I'm given a feed of things that interest me, and then I'm able to kind of like poke around there. Same with Reddit and some of these other applications that have social components to them. I think what's really interesting, though, right now, in terms of what Lens is that we have like two of the biggest social founders in the history of the world also starting to move in the direction of decentralization. One of those is Jack Dorsey, who founded Twitter and then moved on to Blue Sky and now is focused on a protocol called Nader, which is a protocol for building, or it's actually both a protocol and an application right now that is a social application and protocol, but at the core of it is decentralization. One of his tweets, one of his many tweets, I would say, talking about this sort of thing. He says there are only 3 truly censorship resistance technologies at scale today: Tor, Bitcoin, and Nader. One of the things he notes here is that these technologies aren't yet accessible or easy to use, but they will be. And that's one of the things that we're focused on making easier and better: the accessibility and the UX of these applications. And I'll talk about more about why something like this even needs to be decentralized, like why even bring in that complexity or component, right? Another example of this is Mark Zuckerberg. So he founded, obviously, Facebook and ended up acquiring Instagram, and they've made other acquisitions as well. The head of both Instagram as well as a new app that they launched called Threads gave a talk at TED last year talking about building decentralized social applications, and then went on to launch Threads a few months later, or maybe like almost a year later. And one of his first posts on Threads was the one I have here, where he says, "We're committed to building support for ActivityPub, the protocol behind Mastodon. We weren't able to finish this launch due to a number of complications that come along with decentralized network, but it's coming because obviously building this sort of thing is actually more complicated than building in a centralized way." But what really sticks out to me is why you would do this, right? So he actually kind of makes a note of this here. If you're wondering why this matters, here's a reason. You may one day end up leaving Threads, or hopefully not being deplatformed. If that ever happens, you should be able to take your audience with you to another server. Being open can enable that. So there are a few things that are enabled when you build the back-end software and the data in a decentralized way that are compelling to a lot of people. One of them is that you have a portable social graph. You're not locked into a single application. When you have the data open and anyone can build clients on top of it, you're now brought into a world where there is literally an infinite number of ways that information can be displayed to you. And application developers have an infinite way, a number of ways that they can build on top of that data. If you build your following on Twitter and then something like TikTok came around, you literally started from scratch with 0 followers on that new platform. You had to build it again, and it gets kind of tiresome doing this over and over and over. What if instead the next application allowed you to create in the same way that TikTok did, but you were able to take all the followers that you had already on the other apps with you. That's the general idea here. Another thing is that Twitter literally will ban people for sometimes what looks like just no reason. You don't have to live in a country that has a lot of censorship to worry about this sort of thing. For instance, I know people who literally have woken up one day and their account has been turned off or whatever, deleted, and they don't really know why. This happens for a number of reasons. Maybe someone has botted you and doesn't like you, or maybe you've made a mistake and done something. I don't know, but either way, just giving that type of control to people is kind of like a drawback to building in a centralized fashion. But with decentralized technologies, you don't have to worry about that because you are the only person that controls that account. No one else can do anything to that account other than you as the owner of that data and that account. But before going into any more depth there, let's talk about what is a social application. Well, social applications don't necessarily mean like Instagram. There are a lot of applications that have social features built into them that we might not necessarily think about as social apps. For instance, GitHub is a good example of that from the perspective of a developer. Yes, I use it to store my code and update it and download it, but I also use it as a way to discover new things that are happening in the developer ecosystem. I follow other developers. I then am able to see a feed of the things that they're doing. If they star an application, that shows up on my feed. If they create a new repo, that shows up on my feed. It's a really nice way to discover what's happening with all of my developer friends that I follow. Social applications allow you to do things like creating a profile, maintaining that profile, following other users, publishing some sort of content, viewing a feed of others' content that you're following, or being given a feed of content based on some sort of recommendation algorithm. They don't need to encompass all of these things, but they can encompass at least one of these things. So with that being said, how does Lens work in this manner? To break it down, Lens is based on a set of smart contracts that are deployed to Polygon. And on top of those smart contracts, we've built an API and database and indexer that gives you powerful querying capabilities on top of that data. So with a smart contract, you might be limited to what you could do. You can't hit a smart contract with complex queries that you can, a SQL database, for example. But with GraphQL, you can actually do that. You can say, give me the posts that were created by this person during this date range that maybe contain like this word, for example. There's all types of querying that you can do once you have that information stored in a database. And then with GraphQL, you're also kind of performing different queries on top of that data. We've also implemented a couple of things to improve the user experience compared to traditional blockchain applications. One of them is gasless transactions, meaning you don't have to pay to interact with the protocol. All of the transactions are subsidized by the protocol because of our infrastructure costing around 0.0003 cents per transaction, which is a lot less expensive than a traditional blockchain. We also have enabled what we call a dispatcher, which basically just means that you don't need to sign for every non-financial transaction happening on the network. If you're posting or commenting, you don't need to pay for that. You don't need to sign for that because there is no financial liability there. You're just kind of interacting. So having to sign is a very bad UX. So you can enable what's known as a dispatcher. And then from there on, you don't really have to sign any transactions unless you are doing something financial. And then we have a very big focus on developer experience, which I'll touch on next. But one of the questions becomes when you're building in this way, like how do you actually scale this? Because there's a reason why most people don't build these types of applications on blockchains or decentralized technologies. It's actually extremely hard to scale this. Because if you look at a database like DynamoDB, which is something I worked with at AWS for a little over 3 years, we had applications, for instance, Amazon.com, that were doing literally almost 100 million operations per second at peak load. And DynamoDB, this DynamoDB application, or this application that was built on DynamoDB, was actually just a single set of apps that Amazon dealt with. It wasn't a shared database like a blockchain is. A blockchain not only is much less performant than that, but typically they are shared state machines between every application using that blockchain along with all of the users using it. So for instance, Ethereum is sharing block space and the load with every application that's ever been deployed to Ethereum and all of their users. So you're talking about orders of magnitude less scalable for the most part, the average blockchain. Something that we've realized though is that we don't need a financial blockchain to have the capabilities that we need for what we consider a decentralized network. The things that we're worried about are immutability, censorship resistance, and the data to be public and open for everyone to be able to build with. We don't actually care about this double spend problem that most blockchains are built to prevent. So therefore, we've decided to use, for most of the transactions that are not financial, a network called Arweave, and on top of that, bundler network, which enables this type of scale because the only thing that it's focused on is data storage. It's not focused on preventing that double spend problem that limits the scalability to most blockchains. So this infrastructure is something we released at the end of last year called Momoka. And like I mentioned earlier, the average transaction cost is 0.0003 cents per transaction. So for around 700,000 transactions, our infrastructure cost was around $223, which is orders of magnitude cheaper than almost any other blockchain that's out there. So therefore, we're able to subsidize these transactions. Next, I want to talk about the developer experience for people that are here to build. The first thing I want to kind of point out again is the Lens API. The Lens API is just a really great way to interact with data. So you can actually go to our Explorer at api.lens.dev, and you can do things like query pretty much anything, or you can create what's known as a mutation, which is kind of like a put or an update. But the cool thing about GraphQL is that it's self-documenting. So here on the right-hand side, I can see all the different queries and all the different mutations that are available. So here we have all the different ways that we can interact. We can search there. I can here and I can say profiles, and I can search for profiles owned by this address, or publication by publication ID, whatever. And here I can actually ask for all of the fields that I want, because with GraphQL, you're able to only return the data that you would like. So it's a really nice way to interact with the backend. So that's kind of the API, and you would just basically use the API endpoint here in your application and look at our docs. We walk you through how all that works. We also have the Lens SDK. The Lens SDK has it's really two different SDKs that you can work with. One is a React hooks library for building React applications. One is more JavaScript agnostic, called the Lens client. And the Lens SDK kind of sits on top of the API, abstracting away the need to even understand or deal with the GraphQL itself. So with the SDKs, you can make calls in as little as 2 lines of code for maybe querying a publication by ID, or getting publications for a certain user, or getting a list of users, etc. The API for the React Hooks SDK looks something like this. Let's say we want to have a recommendation algorithm for exploring profiles. We can use the use explore profiles hook, and then when we invoke that, we're returned an array that is called data, and then we can deal with that in our app. So really simple, and this is what we're going to be using in just a second. We also have widgets and embeds and a UI kit. So the UI kit is a way to build mobile applications on React Native using Lens, and you can get started with this in as few as 2 lines of code. We've had a lot of applications use the UI kit to actually launch at hackathons and prototype, and this is a really great way to kind of like test out different ideas without having to write a ton of code. The Lens widgets are a really simple way for integrating Lens into non-social apps, or just prototyping again, or just building very quickly. Because let's say you need a way to sign in with Lens, or share a post to Lens, or even render a profile or a publication. You can do that with just 2 lines of code. In this case, you would import like the profile component. You would render a profile. The only prop here that you would pass in would be the handle or the profile ID. And then finally, we also have the Lens BigQuery data sets. This is a set of around 55 or 60 tables that you can use for massive queries on all of the data on Lens that's ever been transacted. This is really great for doing things like building analytics tools, dashboards, or recommendation algorithms. So we can hit this data set and get queries like, give me every post that's ever been created by me, or whatever you could possibly think of. And then finally, we have an XMTP, a namespace that makes it really simple to build encrypted DMs that also are interactive with every other Lens application that are out there. So one of the I would say two of the core ideas that go behind Lens and the value propositions have to do with both extensibility and composability. With extensibility, you're basically able to build custom functionality into Lens in a few different ways. And one of these is custom modules. And then the other way is something that's called open actions that will be available in Lens v2 in a couple of weeks. Custom modules essentially allow you to build custom functionality in the protocol. It would be almost if you wanted a feature to be built into Twitter and you were able to submit a pull request. That's kind of the way I would look at a custom module. You can basically create functionality and have it built into the protocol. The other one has to do with open actions, is something that's not quite out yet, but open actions just allow you to interact with any smart contract from any Lens app. So an example of a module might be something like this one that is built into Lenster. This allows you to set custom, I would say, features when you collect something. This is an optional screen that you can kind of toggle on and off. But when you create a post on something like Lenster, by default, it's just going to post just like a regular post would on Twitter without any additional features. But you can toggle this and say, okay, I want this post to be able to be collected, meaning if they collect it, it's minted on chain. And you can then set things like, I want to charge this amount of money. I want to limit it to this number of people or this number of collects. You can even say things like, I want to split the revenue with this with a charity or with maybe an artist or something like that. So the split revenue feature does exactly that. You can set up different addresses for the money to go to. A cool use case of this I've seen is someone actually setting 100% of the revenue to go to someone else. So if someone else has less of a following than you do and you want to help promote something that they're doing or raise money for them, you can do this permissionlessly. Like, they don't even have to be part of that. You can just raise money and the money will go to their wallet. The next thing is composability. So one of the really cool things about Lens from the perspective of a developer is that you don't need to actually build or manage any backend infrastructure at all. It's very much like serverless technologies or managed services like Auth0 or Okta, where you have this service that provides authentication and all you need to do is hook into the APIs. So this is a big value proposition because you can only have to then focus on the front end. So you can just build front end client-side applications or mobile apps, web apps, whatever, and then the back end is left completely to us to continue iterating on. You also have this user base that's inherited. So every Lens user is part of the social graph that you're basically tapping into. So when you launch a new application, you have less of the cold start problem. And then for users, it's a big value proposition, this idea of a portable social graph. So if I sign up to Lens and I grow a following on one of the apps there, every time a new Lens application launches, I have all of those followers there. So I can go and test out different clients and I have my followers there and they never go away. So for the technology stack, from people building on Lens, beyond the SDKs and stuff that we talked about just now, you might need to tap into a few other things to add additional functionality. For instance, if you want live video, live peer is a really great way to do that. If you're going to be building a web app, you might have already used things like WAGMI hooks, ethers, VM, or Rainbow Kit, or similar libraries, maybe Wallet Connect. You can still use all of that stuff. Building on the client, you can use all of the different web and mobile frameworks that are out there. So you can build native iOS, you can build React Native, Next.js is super popular, Flutter, etc. And I think I talked about XMTP already. And then one other protocol that you might use is Bundler Network. When you're uploading content, you have to store that metadata somewhere yourself. So if I create a post, I'm a developer building this implementation myself. I need to store that metadata somewhere, and we recommend Bundler. And Bundler is documented in our documentation as well on how to actually do that. Okay. With that being said, let's take a look at a demo, because I think this will show you a lot more clearly about what we can do with Lens. And I know I'm going to need to increase my font size quite a bit, so I'll go ahead and do that. And what I have here is a basic Next.js application. If I go to like localhost 3000, see that we just have a pretty basic Next.js application, not much going on there. But one of the libraries that I've installed is the Lens widgets, as well as the React Hooks SDK. So to get started, I might just show you some of the widgets to kind of give you an idea of what they look like. These widgets have quite a bit of, I would say, customization that you can do. But by default, they come like with smart defaults. So I'm going to go ahead and import from the React widgets, the profile widget, the maybe publication and publications plural. Okay, so I might want to render a profile. So I can just basically pass in, and I'll also import the theme so I can basically pass in different themes. I can start by rendering a profile, and I can set the handle as whatever I'd like. So for me, my handle is Nader. And if I go ahead and save this and refresh, then we have the profile render there, which is nice. There we go. I might want to theme this dark theme. I can swap that out pretty easily. I can also set things like the follow button background. Follow button background color. I want it to be white or something like that. Now I have pretty easily set up this component that renders a profile. Let's say I want to render my publications as well, though. I might do publications, and then handle matter, and then theme is also theme.dark. This will now render a feed of all of my most recent publications as well. And we did this with just just a few lines of code. What else we might want to do? Let's see here. Profiles. So let's say we need like a list view. I think this is the API. Yep. I might need a list view for a mobile app or something like that to just render like a list of profiles. I can do that without passing any props, and this should, let's see here. Actually, we have the profile list item. Okay, so for a list, I'll need to have a list of profiles. So, but for now, we can just do this repetitive like this. This would be basically just a really basic list of profiles. And because of the way that I have my CSS set up, I'm going to take away the flex and maybe set a background color would actually make this better. But anyway, but we have these items here. They need to be kind of like boxed in using some CSS. But we got it set up pretty simply. If I go to globals, I might change this background color white to kind of just show you what this looks like a little better. So anyway, it's really simple to kind of build out different basic user interfaces using some of this stuff. The next thing we want to look at though is building like a proper application where we have all of these all this data, but we're able to kind of fully control what's going on. So to do that, what I'm going to do is we're going to use the use explore profiles hook from the React hooks library. I'm going to go back to my app and I'm going to import use explore profiles from the Lens React Web SDK. And I'm going to also import link from next link. This just allows us to create a link. And to invoke this hook, all I need to do is call const data is equal to use explore profiles. And I'll just set this data property as profiles. And then we can just console.log profiles. And what this should do is log out profiles. So if I open up my console here, and I zoom in a bunch, should be able to see here that we have these profiles from this recommendation algorithm, like bringing back an array of profiles. Each profile has things like a bio, a cover picture, a handle, has a picture, pretty much everything you would need to build out a UI that looks something like this. For instance, if I go to my profile and I went to my followers, this is the type of information that we would be able to use to build out this type of UI. You can also use explore publications or use publications passing in like a profile ID to get those. And we're going to take a look at that in just a moment as well. So what I might do next is basically render that list of profiles into my UI. So instead of just returning nothing, I'm going to map over the profiles like so. Just going to delete the main. We're going to go with this. Okay. So here we're saying profiles.map. We're returning a link for each item. The link is going to go to /profile/profile.handle, which is a route that we've yet to create, but we will in just a moment. And then we're going to render an image if they have this profile picture. And we're also going to render their handle and their bio. So this is not going to be the most beautiful UI in the world, but it should give us exactly this right here. So we now see that we've rendered out this list of profiles that came back, and now we're kind of rendering them there. So what we can now do is create this profile route. So if I go here to the app directory, I can create a new folder called profile. And here I'm going to create a new folder called handle. And in handle, I'm going to create a new page called page.tsx. And we're going to do very similar thing like we did a second ago. We're going to import a couple of hooks. And we can now use the handle that we have passed in here as a prop. And what we can do with that handle is we can say we want to get the profile and the loading state using this use profile hook. If it's loading, we're going to return loading. If it's not, we're just going to return a div. But what we want to do is just log out like profile. So now if I click on one of these profiles, let me refresh. Okay, I have to figure out where this bug here is. Let me double check my file structure here. Something going on here with my routing, and I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I can get this working in the next couple of seconds, though. I'm just going to bail and figure this out afterwards. Okay, I think I'm going to have to just bail on this. I'm not sure what's going on here, but if you want to build out this application and make it actually work, you can go to our docs where we actually have this whole thing documented here. You go to the developer quick starts. I think this is where we left off and where everything was working. But after this, we tried to create this profile view here. So we have this profile. Yeah, so there's some error there. But anyway, we got kind of far, I guess. Again, if you want to kind of see some of the links for this workshop, scan the QR code. This will show you not only a couple of GitHub repos with workshops, but also the docs for the app that we just built there. Also, we actually have docs.lens.xyz and lens.xyz/apps documented in that QR code, I believe, but also our mirror, which has some interesting blog posts to kind of learn more about Lens V2 and some of the other stuff we're doing. And I think that's about it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Nader. Yeah, I think we have a couple of questions in the questions tab. And to everyone in the audience here as well, please feel free to put any questions that you might have now also in the questions tab. Can you see that section, Nader?
Questions?
Yeah, the questions.
Chat. I see the chat. Yes.
Cool. There's so I can pull this up for you, and you can have a look at it here as well.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I saw this. I only see the chat. Okay. Cool. Yes, there is a testnet, and you can get a testnet handle just by going to the docs.lens.xyz. The very first page has a link to getting a Lens profile and documentation around mainnet and testnet. So there's a couple of ways to create a profile and testnet on that page. One is just clicking a link, basically signing up for one. Another one is an API endpoint that you could programmatically create profiles. We have 3 networks. We have the mainnet, we have testnet, and then we have a sandbox, which is really, really open, lets you pretty much do anything. The testnet is kind of like a duplicate of mainnet.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Jamaru. Here is another one.
Yes, you can create multiple applications using the same data that people have used. It would be almost like if Twitter had their API open for free and they made a focus of making the API better and better. Twitter does have an API, but they now charge a lot for that API, and it's very limited. You can't actually use it even if you pay. There's like a tier that's $50,000, I think, a month, and it's still somewhat limited. It would essentially be if you had access to that. And then when you say personal data, I mean, it's just their social data that anyone can kind of view in any of the applications already. So I wouldn't call it maybe personal data, but it is their social like data that's already available, probably like obviously in other apps.
Cool, awesome. Here is another one.
So blocking is going to be a part of Lens V2, which is not out yet, but we're releasing testnet on the 18th of September, which is in 5 days, and mainnet in a couple of weeks after that. So you can block at that point, but for now you cannot. You can hide your data using encryption, which is built into the protocol, but it's also built into a lot of apps. So you can basically set rules around who can view your posts. So you can say only these people can view it, or only people with this on-chain interaction can view it, or maybe someone that's bought like a collectible from me or something like that. There's all types of stuff you can do there.
Cool, awesome. Those are the only questions that I can see in the questions tab. Ty in the chat, I don't know if you can see that, has said one idea would be using a verifiable credential to determine what data you might want to show on your profile.
Yes,
yeah.
You can do stuff like that. There's quite a bit of experimentation happening right now, and that there's also this idea of like communities, where if you're part of a community, you can view what's happening there, and everything there is kind of encrypted as well. So like if you're not part of that community, you can't see what's going on.
Cool, interesting. Yeah, any other questions? Here we go. Tony, is this run only on Polygon? Is it easy to deploy this on another blockchain as well? Here we go.
Yeah, the protocol can be deployed anywhere easily, but a lot of the value proposition is in the existing user base. In part, in Lens V2, one of the things that we're enabling is cross-chain interactions, meaning that you can interact with base from Lens and vice versa. So for now, basically almost all of the on-chain stuff is through Arweave and Polygon, but in the future, we're already building out integrations with like Zora, for example, and other networks and apps that are built on other networks.
Awesome, cool. Another one's just come in. How many users? I'm assuming, Jelly, that this means
Lens has around 120,000 users right now, but it's still closed beta. So once Lens V2 opens up, we're going to make it to where any application can sign up users on their own. So you don't need to go through any waitlisting process or allow listing process like you do today. But today it's limited based on the fact that we have like a sign up that goes through kind of a review process for Sybil resistance and then brings people in. But yeah, right now it's around 120,000 and honestly about 40,000 of those maybe in that range are probably what I would consider either like bots or people that signed up to airdrop farm. So we're very careful about trying to kind of limit those sort of folks, but they still have gotten in. And I think that you see bots and stuff on Twitter as well. But if you want to kind of say, I would say it's closer to maybe 80,000-ish real active users or real users. Yeah.
Cool. I think another question from the same person. Does scaling have a limit? Or?
Right now, our infrastructure maxes out at around 40,000 TPS, which is orders of magnitude more than any volume we've seen yet. I think Twitter hit 50,000 tweets per second at the height of the World Cup, to give you kind of some perspective, and we're nowhere near that.
Okay, here we've got another one.
I mean, a lot of people are building out mobile apps, are getting a lot of attention, obviously, because that's kind of like the platform most people are using. We've seen founders of one team like getting funding. We just had a company or a group of devs that built an app that raised at a valuation of around $10 or $11 million. Small group of devs building a mobile app. I mean, but beyond just which platform to build on, there's all types of stuff. I mean, if you look at what happened with Friend Tech, I think that's a really interesting idea, building out some type of incentive mechanism around, financial incentives like that are pretty cool. There's a lot of art stuff happening. So anything like focused on collectibles, videos, images, and stuff. I think there's a lot of opportunity for building niche communities, because for developers to monetize with Lens V2, you don't need to have a ton of users. You only need a few tens of thousands of users in order to make a lot of money from as a developer using Lens. So I would say sometimes it's cool to start off with like a small niche community, because you get more engaged people that way, and then let it grow organically from there.
Awesome. I think there's another question in the chat. The question is, how does this link to Onyx? Or I suppose, how would you envision someone being able to use both technologies in this hackathon?
Yeah, I mean, someone mentioned a lot of stuff around verifiable credentials. So you could build stuff at the protocol level to make it more Sybil resistant when you're signing up for a Lens app and providing some functionality there. You could build out extended Lens profile information in an app. So for right now, Lens profiles have a standard set of metadata, but they also have a completely open section where you can kind of program any other type of metadata into a profile. So using the identity like SDKs, you could do all types of stuff there for a specific application that you're building that is a lot different than any other app, that because other apps wouldn't even know about that information to surface it. So you could kind of let people build out, for instance, on GitHub, the GitHub profile would have a lot of information that the average application would not surface. You could build something like that. So there's a lot of stuff you can do really around identity, I think,
For
within their
sure.
user's profile. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we've got another question come in.
Lens V2 will be on testnet September 18th. It will be on, and you'll be able to hack with it in like 5 days. We're really excited about it. It's something we've been working on for 6 months or longer, thinking about it for a year or longer. And then mainnet will come 2 to 3 weeks later. The only reason we're not like it's stable, the reason we're not launching it to mainnet is to give applications time to migrate, because there's a lot of new features and we don't want to launch it on day one and everyone's apps breaks. So when we say testnet, it's actually already been built. It's working great. We're just going to let people kind of learn the new APIs so they can migrate their Lens apps.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's all of the questions, unless anyone has something they want to quickly jump in. But yeah, Nader, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Yeah, or get technical help from the Lens team.
Yeah, we're going to be active in the Lens Discord and in the Encode Club Discord. So feel free to drop questions there. You can also go on Twitter and hit me up there. I'm Dabbit3, DABIT, and the number 3. You can tag Lens Protocol on social anytime you have a question. Also, we're keeping up with that very much so. In fact, that might even be like the best place if you want to get immediate feedback. Just say at Lens Protocol, hey, I'm building this thing and I have a question about this or that, and maybe tag me or someone like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think, yeah, that's everything. Yeah, people sharing ideas with each other in the chat. Cool. Well, if that is all of the questions, I think I'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Nader, for coming along and speaking today and really like kind of putting some interesting kind of thoughts and concepts in our heads. To everyone else, sorry, just monitoring the chat. A few more like admin things again. Just make sure that you've got access to the Hacker Pack here. The recording for this workshop will go up sometime tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And if any of your friends have missed the session, yeah, please do check that out. Our next workshop is in about half an hour, so if you guys want to go take a quick break and then meet me back in the next room, that would be awesome. It'd be so great to see you all again. But I will stop talking and end it there. So yeah, Nader, thank you so much. Any last words?
No, that's it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, so awesome. So such a pleasure to have you. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.